Welcome. Take a deep, slow breath. Settle comfortably into your space and let your mind begin to gently drift as we embark together on a calming journey into the quiet echoes of the distant past. Tonight, we'll softly wander through the ancient streets of Babylon, a city shrouded in myth and legend, but filled with the quiet reality of human lives, ordinary lives, lived in extraordinary times. Allow yourself to gently explore this world, distant enough to evoke wonder, yet detailed enough to soothe your mind and guide you into restful sleep. Imagine yourself in a place both familiar and foreign, ancient Babylon. Its grandeur and struggles coexist peacefully tonight, whispered gently through time, wrapped in the steady rhythm of history's endless river. As you listen, the day's concerns will fade, replaced by the gentle flow of the Euphrates and the steady hum of life in one of humanity's oldest cities. Imagine waking as dawn slowly creeps over mud brick houses, their walls gently warmed by the first touch of sunlight. You are a common laborer in ancient Babylon, your day dictated not by clocks or calendars, but by the rising and setting of the relentless sun. Your morning begins early, far earlier than you might wish, pulled from sleep by the low, distant murmuring of neighbors already moving about their daily chores. You rise from your reed mat, stiff from the thin cushioning beneath you, your room simple and sparse. Your feet touch the cool clay floor, soothing but perpetually dusty. As you step outside, the air greets you thickly, already heavy with the promise of intense heat. You breathe deeply, feeling the dryness scratch softly at your throat, a constant companion in this arid landscape. Your first task, like most days, is to fetch water from the Euphrates River, which glimmers quietly in the distance, promising relief but delivering its own unique challenges. You join a steady procession of people, women, children, elders, all moving in quiet unison, containers in hand, each vessel worn smooth by years of daily use. The river itself, lifeblood of the city, is both giver and taker. Its waters nourish fields of barley and dates, essential crops that sustain life here. Yet each drop must be boiled or strained meticulously, its muddy richness hiding dangers unseen. Illness lurks quietly beneath the surface, a silent consequence everyone here must gently accept. You fill your clay jug slowly, hearing the reassuring sound of water trickling, knowing this precious resource must last until sunset. Returning home, you pause briefly at the temple steps, rising like mountains above the city's skyline. Temples dominate your world, each brick laid meticulously by hands like yours, testament to devotion and endurance. Religion is not simply spiritual here. It seeps calmly into every act, a steady, ever-present rhythm guiding daily life. Work begins under the growing heat, your task for today repetitive and demanding, shaping bricks, carrying loads, maintaining canals that bring water to distant fields. Hours pass slowly, marked only by the movement of shadows, shrinking beneath the relentless midday sun. The air around you shimmers gently, heat rising in waves from the baked earth, enveloping you in its heavy, sleepy embrace. Food is simple and sparse, a brief respite at midday. Barley cakes, dates, perhaps onions seasoned mildly, flavors unchanging but reassuringly constant. Each bite is slow and thoughtful, sustenance carefully savored, knowing energy must last through the afternoon hours ahead. As evening softly approaches, fatigue settles gently into your limbs. a familiar companion. But rest does not yet come. Your day concludes with communal chores, tending small gardens, repairing worn tools, maintaining the delicate balance between survival and exhaustion. Night brings gentle relief. As darkness softly descends, coolness finally seeps into your bones. Stars emerge, clear and bright in the unpolluted ancient sky, reminders of cycles beyond your own daily struggles. You lie again on your mat, each breath slower, more relaxed, allowing your mind to drift, understanding intimately why each day is precious yet deeply challenging in this ancient city. And as you drift deeper into comfort, our journey through Babylon continues gently onward, slowly drifting from the mundane rhythm of everyday Babylonian life. Imagine now that you are walking along a dusty road towards a city of great renown. In the distance, beneath the golden glow of late afternoon sun, rises Babylon, majestic, powerful, and ruled by the great lawgiver Hammurabi, whose legacy is etched not just into stone, but into the fabric of human history itself. Hammurabi was a king, yes, but more than that. He was a visionary who brought a semblance of order to a chaotic and fragmented world. Born into a minor kingdom around 1810 BCE, his life unfolded in an era of shifting alliances, fragile kingdoms, and endless conflicts. As you walk slowly towards Babylon, imagine seeing Hammurabi as a young ruler, seated quietly, weighing his choices amidst advisors who whisper cautions and urgencies in equal measure. In a world where diplomacy often meant war by another name, Hammurabi swiftly mastered the delicate dance of alliances and betrayals. Imagine yourself sitting at his council table, surrounded by the whispers of spies, the subtle gestures of courtiers, and the quiet confidence of a king who knew patience as well as power. His rise was gradual but unstoppable. Cities and tribes joined willingly or fell reluctantly, becoming part of his expanding dominion. But Hammurabi was more than just a conqueror. He was a builder of civilizations. Imagine now the slow, painstaking process by which he assembled his famous code, the Code of Hammurabi, etched carefully into a towering pillar of black basalt. This monumental stone stood in public view, proclaiming justice, fairness, and authority to all who lived within his rule. Picture yourself standing quietly before this stone, its surface carefully carved with symbols you may not understand, but whose gravity you can feel. A quiet testament to power wielded responsibly, if sternly. The famous laws themselves reveal a deep yearning for order and stability amidst chaos. An eye for an eye, the code proclaims, harsh to modern ears, yet in its time a revolution of fairness, limiting vengeance and ensuring clear, enforceable penalties. Imagine, in the stillness of a cool Babylonian night, how the lives of ordinary people might have been touched by these laws. Perhaps a farmer, falsely accused, finds solace in the protection of clearly defined justice. Perhaps a merchant, cheated in trade, seeks and receives restitution under these carefully inscribed decrees. Yet no empire endures untested, and as Hammurabi aged, cracks inevitably began to form. His empire, unified by force and tempered by law, relied heavily on his personal wisdom and diplomatic skill. Imagine yourself in the corridors of his palace during those final years, the flickering oil lamps casting shadows as the aging king reviewed messages of rebellion, drought, and unrest from distant provinces. Power, after all, is a fleeting thing. Upon Hammurabi's death around 1750 BCE, the unity he had forged slowly fractured. His successors lacked either his vision or strength, and Babylon began once more to slip into chaos and conflict. Imagine yourself walking again through the streets of the city years later, seeing fragments of his great empire gradually fading into memory, people whispering nostalgically of better, more stable times as they pass the weathering basalt pillar, a silent guardian of a past greatness. As we drift gently away from the figure of Hammurabi, reflect quietly on the impermanence of power, the persistence of human hope for justice and stability, and the inevitability of change. With this gentle reflection, we transition softly into our next tale, deeper still into mysteries buried beneath sand and forgotten by time. Imagine now the cool hush of early evening, when the sun has dipped just below the horizon and the city begins to soften. The heat of the day is giving way to a gentler stillness, and you find yourself wandering near the northern edge of ancient Babylon, where the towering Ishtar Gate once stood like a sapphire threshold between the earthly and the divine. The gate, constructed around 575 BCE, was more than an entrance. It was a statement, a silent proclamation of Babylon's wealth, power, and devotion. Its brilliant blue bricks, fired with lapis-hued glaze, shimmered in the light, catching the eye of every traveler, every soldier, every humble subject who passed through it. You walk slowly along the processional way, once a wide avenue lined with lion reliefs and ceremonial sculptures. The lions, guardians of the goddess Ishtar, seem almost to move with you, their golden manes etched in careful lines, their presence a mixture of welcome and warning. Beneath the surface of the modern world, this gate lay hidden for thousands of years, covered by layers of earth, time, and forgetfulness. It was not until the early 20th century that German archaeologists began to unearth it, brick by brick, from the still silence of the sands. Imagine the quiet excitement of those first discoveries, the gentle brushing away of earth from ancient symbols, the realization that these stones had not seen the sun in millennia. Now imagine standing at the base of a ziggurat, not just any ziggurat, but Etemenanki, the towering temple that may have inspired the biblical story of the Tower of Babel. Its foundations once reached 7 levels high, each stage built of sun-dried bricks and decorated with simple yet grand geometry. At the summit, a shrine dedicated to Marduk, the chief deity of Babylon, once stood, kissed by the sky, brushed by the soft breath of wind rolling in from the desert. Climbing such a structure in your mind's eye, you feel the labor it required to build, year after year. Thousands of workers hauling mud bricks in endless procession, overseen by priests and scribes who ensured every detail aligned with sacred geometry. These were temples not merely for prayer, but for contact, with the divine, with the stars, with meaning beyond what the eye could see. Below in the earth, other ziggurats sleep still. Buried beneath millennia of dust and sediment, they wait quietly. Some are known only by fragments of records, ancient tablets half erased by time, or oral stories passed gently through generations. They speak of devotion on a scale we no longer understand, of towers that touch the heavens, and rituals performed in chambers carved from the living earth. Archaeologists today, with soft brushes and steady hands, listen for these whispers. They do not race. They excavate slowly, carefully, as if not to disturb the dreams of the past. Their tools tap softly against time itself, revealing staircases that lead nowhere, doorways sealed with silence, and murals whose colors, though faded, still hum with life. There is something deeply comforting in this buried grandeur. These structures, once so central to life and belief, now sleep beneath a world that has changed entirely, and yet they remain, silent, waiting. Reminders of how even the greatest human creations are eventually folded gently back into the earth. As we leave these monuments behind, gates of kings, towers of gods, we do not close the door, but leave it slightly ajar. For in the quiet stillness of the sand, history is always softly speaking. And now, our journey carries us from the sacred and monumental to another realm of life, the privileged and the powerful. Let us walk gently toward the contrasting world of those who lived not in mud brick homes, but in palaces with linens and perfumes. Their days governed not by toil, but by ceremony. As the stars gently flicker overhead and the night deepens, we turn now from the dusty streets and grand monuments to a quieter world, still bustling, still essential, but far removed from the toil of common laborers. Imagine yourself now as a priest, or perhaps a priest's attendant, living and working within the grand temples of Babylon. Here, the rhythm of life is dictated not by the seasons of the fields, but by sacred calendars and ceremonial precision. The temple is not only a place of worship, it is a beating heart of the city, a center of administration, economy, education, and power. Its walls are thick, cool, and quiet, holding within them both the fragrance of incense and the rustling of papyrus scrolls. Imagine walking slowly through stone corridors, your feet cushioned by woven reed mats, your eyes adjusting to the soft, golden light of oil lamps flickering along the walls. Within this sacred space, every act holds meaning. The preparation of offerings, the measuring of grain, the precise timing of chants, all must be conducted in harmony, as if aligning the city itself with the will of the gods. Each morning begins not with the clamor of a crowded street, but with ritual purification, hands washed in sacred water, clothing chosen according to the day's rites, and prayers whispered in language unchanged for generations. As a priest, your role extends beyond the altar. You may oversee vast temple lands, fields worked by hired laborers, granaries brimming with barley, and livestock tended by temple herders. These are not private holdings, but divine assets, belonging to the gods, though managed by their earthly intermediaries. You might spend hours reviewing clay tablets, tallying receipts, recording distributions in precise cuneiform. It is meticulous work, demanding but quiet, a far cry from the heat and urgency of canal repair or brick-making. The temple feeds many. Artisans craft votive statues in its workshops, scribes copy sacred texts in shaded rooms, and cooks prepare meals not only for priests, but for the gods themselves. Imagine the care given to every detail: bread baked into sacred shapes, incense blended from imported resins, beer fermented according to age-old recipes. Each item placed with gentle hands upon altars, symbols of gratitude, supplication, or reverence. You rarely go hungry. The temple diet, while simple, is generous. Grains, oils, dates, and meats offered in ritual and then shared among the temple staff. Linen robes are replaced as needed, sandals resoled, duties rotated in accordance with both need and tradition. There is comfort here, and a kind of predictability. Yet, with privilege comes obligation. A priest must not falter in ritual, must remain pure in body and mind, must be seen as above the fray of ordinary struggles. And though the temple seems eternal, even it is not immune to the subtle frictions of power. Rivalries among priests, disputes over land, and tensions with the royal court simmer beneath the surface. You learn quickly to speak carefully, to listen more than you reveal, to understand that within these sacred walls, politics flows just as surely as incense. At night, the temple quiets. Only a few remain awake, perhaps a scribe working by lamplight, a young initiate sweeping the marble steps, or a priest on watch in the high tower, gazing out over the city toward the dark horizon. You lie down in a small private chamber, the scent of cedar wood and myrrh lingering faintly in the air. Your body relaxed, your mind calmed by the deep familiarity of ritual. The temple does not sleep, not truly. Somewhere within its stone chambers, prayers continue in hushed tones. Fires are tended, statues are bathed and clothed. The gods are always present, always watching. And you, nestled within this sacred institution, drift into a quiet sleep beneath their gaze. As our journey continues, we will leave behind the polished calm of priestly life and return once more to the city itself. This time, to explore the textures of daily existence, from the smells of the market to the mysteries of medicine, in the enduring hum of ancient Babylonian life. As the early morning haze lifts gently above the rooftops of Babylon, the city slowly comes to life. But it is not the sound that reaches you first. It is the smell. A peculiar mixture, at once earthy and smoky, sweet and harsh. The scent of fire-kilned clay, dried reeds, open cooking fires, and underneath it all, the sharp, almost metallic tang of bitumen. Bitumen, thick, black, and tar-like, is everywhere in Babylon. It coats rooftops to protect against the sun's relentless glare, seals bricks and ziggurats and canals, and lines the baskets used to carry water from the riverbanks. Its scent clings to the walls, to clothing, even to the skin. No one comments on it. It is simply the aroma of home. Imagine you are walking through the narrow lanes of a residential quarter, pressed in on both sides by tall mud brick walls. Overhead, woven reed awnings attempt to shade the alleys, but the heat is already rising. You pass by workers daubing fresh bitumen onto a leaky cistern. It glistens under the morning sun, releasing its potent perfume into the air, a scent you've known since birth. You may not know it by name, but you know it by feel. It stains your fingers, sticks to your sandals, and seeps into the very fabric of the city. It is used to waterproof the foundations of homes, to caulk boats, and to preserve sacred objects. In some cases, it is even mixed with other materials to form rudimentary medical salves, applied cautiously to wounds and insect bites. There is no escaping it, and yet strangely, no desire to. It is as much a part of Babylon as the Euphrates, as familiar as the hum of a lullaby in the dark. Its scent becomes a quiet companion, embedded in every crevice, carried on every breeze. Hygiene in Babylon is not what modern minds might expect. There are public bathhouses, yes, and daily washing is a ritual for many, especially among priests and scribes. But water is precious, and soap, as we know it, does not yet exist. Instead, people cleanse with oil and scraped clay, and sometimes with river sand. Scented oils and resins are applied to mask body odors, and incense fills both temple and home, burning slowly in clay braziers. Still, the aroma of bitumen always lingers. It mingles with the herbal scent of henna in women's hair, with the rich aroma of sesame oil in cooking pots, with the faint musk of dust and dried mud that settles on every surface. It is a smell both utilitarian and sacred, used to bind the sacred walls of temples and the broken bones of ailing workers alike. Children play barefoot in courtyards, where warm tar seeps between the bricks, their feet sticky by evening. Merchants repair their carts with bitumen-sealed ropes. Even the sick, lying on reed mats in shaded rooms, may be offered poultices held together with this dark, heavy substance. Over time, your senses adjust. The smell becomes less a nuisance and more a background hum, an olfactory symbol of resilience, of permanence. You come to associate it with stability, with the structures that do not crumble, with the boats that do not sink, with the walls that keep the floodwaters at bay. And so, in Babylon, everyone smells faintly of bitumen, not as a mark of uncleanliness, but as a badge of belonging. It is the smell of the city itself, strong, enduring, unyielding, a reminder that survival often clings not to what is clean or pure, but to what is practical, enduring, and ever-present. As we leave this sensory thread behind, we move now to a quieter corner of Babylon, where a life unfolds not in the fields or the streets, but in the shaded chambers of scribes, those who carve memory into clay, word by word, stroke by stroke. Let us step now into a different kind of stillness, one not defined by sweat and labor in the fields, but by careful thought, quiet concentration, and the scratch of a reed stylus pressed gently into clay. The scribe's world is orderly, methodical, and filled with the soft rhythm of symbols taking shape, line by line, on small tablets that capture the voice of civilization itself. Imagine a small chamber lit by slats of morning light, the air cool and still. You are a young apprentice scribe in Babylon, inheriting a tradition rooted even earlier in the Sumerian schools of long ago. Your teacher, a stern man with steady hands and ink-stained robes, waits already seated behind a low table. Around you, shelves of clay tablets are neatly arranged, some still damp from yesterday's lessons, others hardened by sun and time. You sit cross-legged on the floor, a tablet balanced in your lap, stylus in hand. The tool is simple, made from hollowed reed, but your task is not. Today, you copy legal formulas, words that must be exact, precise, unchanging. You repeat the same phrase dozens of times, your strokes practiced and deliberate. If you make a mistake, you'll smooth the clay and begin again. The work is slow, repetitive, but not without its comfort. The steady press and lift of the stylus becomes like a heartbeat, familiar, calming. You hear the gentle murmur of your peers, the distant sounds of a courtyard broom, the occasional creak of sandals on stone as someone passes by the window. The world outside bustles. Here, it is quiet. Scribes are not laborers. They are not priests, but they hold a unique place in Babylonian life. Custodians of contracts, keepers of records, and conveyors of prayers. Without scribes, nothing is remembered. Nothing is accounted for. You may one day document a land dispute between farmers, a shipment of dates, a marriage agreement, or a prayer to Marduk. You might even write laws, or copy the very words of Hammurabi himself. Midday brings a break, and you step outside into a shaded courtyard. There, bread and lentils are shared. Water is passed from hand to hand in a wide ceramic jug. Your fingers are smudged with clay, your sleeves powdered with fine dust. You sit in the shade and listen as senior scribes discuss grammar and temple budgets in the same breath. Their voices even, patient, scholarly. The afternoon brings more practice. Perhaps a new tablet is placed before you, larger, flatter. You begin a list. Livestock delivered to the granary, measured in cattle and sheep, each with a symbol carefully etched, each stroke firm and unhurried. Cuneiform is more than writing. It is art and memory intertwined. You do not just learn letters, you learn legacy. Outside the tablet house, the world moves fast. Traders haggle, farmers shout, the river flows steadily by. But here in the scribe's chambers, time feels suspended. You work not for applause, but for accuracy, not for glory, but for truth preserved. You learn the rhythm of clay drying slowly in the shade, the weight of a word, the shape of a sentence too sacred to alter. As the sun dips lower, your day winds down. The classroom empties, the tools are cleaned, the unused tablets stored for tomorrow. You roll your tired shoulders and step back outside, the air cooling gently on your skin. You carry your tablet home, still soft, carefully wrapped. It holds not just words, but the labor of your thought, the trace of your presence in this moment of history. And as you drift into sleep that night, you do so with clay beneath your nails, your mind filled with symbols that have no sound, only meaning, a quiet echo of the eternal human need to remember. Now, with the scribes behind us, let us move forward to a time of trial, when the skies darkened, crops failed, and even kings questioned the favor of the gods. Our next step takes us toward collapse, and the ancient stories whispered in times of ruin. Now, as we move through the quiet ruins of once mighty empires, our path takes a darker turn, soft, solemn, and slow. The stones beneath your feet seem colder now, the wind across the plain more persistent, as if carrying ancient echoes of loss. Tonight, we wander into the shadowy memory of collapse, into the fading pulse of the Akkadian Empire, and the story of its gentle unraveling. Before Babylon, there was Akkad, a city lost to time, yet once powerful enough to shape the arc of Mesopotamian history. The empire that grew around it was vast, ruled by kings who claimed to command the four corners of the world. Among them was Sargon of Akkad, a conqueror of cities, a unifier of people, and a name spoken with reverence or fear. But our focus tonight is not on the rise, but the slow, inevitable fall. The Akkadian Empire collapsed not in fire or battle alone, but in silence, in slow starvation, in wind-blown dust that refused to settle. Scholars have long debated what happened, but some clues whisper of environmental catastrophe, of a great drought, a shift in rains that had always, until then, returned faithfully with the seasons. Imagine, if you will, waking to a sky too bright, too clear, season after season. The riverbeds low, the earth cracked and pale. Barley no longer rising in the fields, palms yellowed and brittle. You live in a small farming village along one of the outer provinces, and you've begun to count each grain, to water each plant with prayers instead of certainty. Even the temple stores grow light. The rain does not come. The priests begin to speak in hushed tones of omens misread. The king sends envoys to the gods with offerings, but still the skies remain unchanged. Trade falters. Caravans arrive late or not at all. Once bustling cities begin to thin, some quietly abandoned, their bricks left to dry and crumble under an indifferent sun. There is an ancient text known as the Curse of Akkad. It reads not like prophecy, but lament. In its verses, the gods are said to have turned away. The city, once blessed, is deserted. Gates left swinging open. Water jugs empty. Even the birds, it says, have forgotten how to sing. Imagine hearing these words by firelight, recited by a trembling elder as your village fades quietly into the dust. The language is poetic, but the consequences were real. Archaeological records show a sharp decline in population, signs of abandoned settlements, and layers of wind-blown sand covering entire towns. What had once been a flourishing empire became a scattered memory, carried only in fragments of tablet and the faint outlines of irrigation canals no longer needed. There was no single day of collapse. No trumpet sounded. Instead, it happened slowly, like twilight. A gradual dimming of civilization, a soft closing of the book. And yet, from that quiet devastation, new cities would rise. New leaders, new prayers, new hopes. Babylon itself would be born from the dust of Akkad, taking root where others had withered. The wheel of history turns, even in drought, even when the skies are silent. As we leave this moment behind, let us walk onward to a gentler place, a night sky once watched with wonder, and the stars that guided more than just travelers. Our next path takes us upward into the mysteries of the heavens, where Babylonian astrologers searched the stars not just for omens, but for meaning. Now, we leave the dusty plains and crumbling cities behind and turn our gaze upward to the vast, endless sky above ancient Babylon. It is night again, and the stars stretch in every direction, serene and unmoving, like pinpricks in a dark curtain. You are lying on a flat rooftop, a cool breeze brushing gently against your cheek. The clay beneath you still holds the heat of the day, but above you, the heavens breathe in stillness. The Babylonians were among the first to read the sky not just as a marvel, but as a message. Imagine the quiet rituals of an astrologer priest, standing silently on the highest terrace of a ziggurat, watching the slow wheel of the cosmos. No telescope, no machinery, only keen eyes, a stylus, and a soft slab of clay. For them, the stars were not merely lights, they were scribes of the gods, recording divine will, hinting at future events, revealing secrets wrapped in silence. Each wandering planet, each shifting constellation, each eclipse, these were signs to be interpreted with care. Venus might foretell war. The moon's movement could warn of famine or favor. Nothing in the heavens was random. Everything had meaning. Imagine being a student under one of these sky watchers. You rise before dawn and climb the temple tower. The wind is cool, and the city below still sleeps. Your teacher points to a star just above the horizon, murmurs a name, Ninmah or Ishtar, and gestures for you to mark its position. You press a stylus into soft clay, recording not only the time, but the feeling of the air, the shape of the clouds, the mood of the moment. Over time, you learn to recognize the steady return of Jupiter, the red drift of Mars, the rare disappearance of the moon. You begin to sense patterns, and slowly, patiently, you begin to see how these align with happenings on Earth, how kings fall, how floods come, how peace emerges from chaos when the stars seem to whisper their permission. The practice of astrology in Babylon was not personal in the modern sense. It did not offer daily horoscopes or vague assurances of romance. It was a system of omens, meant to guide the fate of entire kingdoms. The stars were consulted before battles, before temple dedications, before harvests. A favorable alignment could calm a nervous ruler. A bad omen might delay a coronation, or prompt sacrifices meant to appease unseen forces. Their sky was mapped with constellations both familiar and strange. The bull of heaven, the lion, the scorpion. These were not just shapes. They were stories, myths woven into light. They spoke of gods at war, lovers betrayed, monsters tamed by fate. The sky was a great tapestry of memory, where time itself could be seen and slowly understood. And yet, for all its grandeur, there was deep humility in Babylonian star-watching. The astrologers knew they could never control the heavens. They could only listen. They could only observe. Their role was not to change the future, but to gently interpret the signs and to help the city prepare, endure, adapt. As you lie once more beneath that ancient sky, you feel a quiet connection to these stargazers. Their world is distant, their tools simple, but their awe, their gentle wonder, is one we still carry. The stars, after all, remain unchanged, still watching, still waiting. And now, as the sky begins to pale with the coming dawn, we return to the streets of Babylon, to the rhythm of daily life among merchants and market stalls. Our next journey will take you into the bustling heart of commerce and survival, as the sky lightens and the first hints of morning stretch across the horizon. The city of Babylon begins to stir once more. The markets, lifeblood of commerce and chatter, wake with a gentle hum that will, within hours, swell into a constant murmur of voices, footsteps, and the occasional bark of a goat or shout of a trader. You find yourself standing at the edge of a wide thoroughfare leading into the marketplace. The stone underfoot is smooth from years of traffic, and the air already carries a mixture of aromas. The sharp tang of onions, the comforting scent of baked barley bread, and the ever-present musk of livestock moving lazily between stalls. To survive a day in the Babylonian market, one must know the flow. Step in too quickly, and you'll be overwhelmed by motion. Pause too long, and you may find yourself jostled or drawn into a negotiation you didn't intend to join. The key is to move slowly, patiently, as the locals do. Eyes open, shoulders relaxed, voice calm. Merchants call softly from behind low wooden counters or under broad cloth awnings. Their goods are simple but essential. Baskets of dried dates, mounds of lentils, wheels of goat cheese wrapped in leaves. Spices, if you can afford them, are displayed in careful piles. Coriander, cumin, and occasionally cinnamon carried over long distances, prized like gold. You pass a woman selling fish from shallow reed baskets, the creatures arranged with care, their scales dull now in the morning light. Beside her, a potter displays rows of bowls and jugs, and each slightly uneven, their glazes chipped in places, but sturdy and familiar. Further down, a scribe sits at a small table offering to draw up contracts for trade deals or personal debts. His tablet is ready. His stylus is clean. The market is not just a place to buy. It is a place to know. Here, news spreads as easily as prices. You hear someone mention a poor barley yield upriver. Another trader complains of the latest temple tax. Children dart between legs, carrying small errands or playing games with pebbles and string. It is not chaotic, but alive, steady flowing, with a rhythm that carries everyone along. Bartering is the norm. Currency in the traditional sense is rare, and silver, the standard of value, is weighed on small, handheld balances. If you offer too little, a merchant may simply turn away. If you offer too much, he may look at you with pity or amusement. It's a dance of quiet calculation, one learned over years. You clutch a small jar of sesame oil you've just acquired. It will be used sparingly, added to stews or drizzled over flatbread. Its richness a small comfort in otherwise repetitive meals. As you tuck it into your satchel, you pass a stall where incense burns in a shallow dish, its smoke curling gently upward, mingling with the scent of fresh herbs and sun-warmed earth. There are dangers, of course. Theft is not uncommon. Tempers flare. Accusations sometimes turn to formal disputes, taken to temple courts where scribes mediate beneath the watchful eyes of minor officials. But mostly, the market is self-regulating. A shared space built on quiet cooperation, mutual need, and the slow churn of habit. You find a quiet corner, shaded by a stretched cloth overhead, and sit for a moment on a low wall. The market hums around you, neither urgent nor dull, but comfortably in between. The sound of sandals on stone, the rustle of palm-woven baskets, the gentle laughter of an old man recounting a story for the 5th or 6th time. All of it forms a lullaby of labor, community, and simple purpose. And so, the market continues, as it always has, feeding the city, binding its people, and whispering stories in the steady rhythm of trade. As the sun climbs higher and the streets grow brighter, we leave the marketplace behind and turn our attention to another story, one not of goods or gold, but of women. Our next path leads into the homes, roles, and rhythms of the women of Ur, where status, tradition, and quiet resilience shaped daily life. Now, let us step away from the bustle of trade and enter the quieter, more intimate world of domestic life, into shaded courtyards and modest homes where women of ancient Ur, a city older than Babylon itself, shaped and sustained the rhythm of society. Their names are often lost to time, but their presence is everywhere, in the records, in the architecture, and in the subtle order of daily life. Imagine the city of Ur near the end of its golden age. Sun-baked walls, narrow streets, and homes clustered tightly together. You walk slowly through a residential quarter, passing doors that open into quiet courtyards, where laundry hangs on lines strung between walls, and the soft sound of grinding grain echoes rhythmically from within. Inside one such home, a woman sits cross-legged on a mat, grinding barley with steady pressure, her sleeves rolled neatly to her elbows. This act, repeated thousands of times, forms the basis of the family's meals. Her movements are practiced, her breathing even. In the corner, a clay oven glows softly, its heat managed carefully to bake flatbread without scorching the precious grain. Despite the limitations imposed by law and tradition, women in Ur held responsibilities and sometimes power. In the wealthier households, women managed the distribution of food, oversaw household servants, and kept records of rations and property. A woman could inherit land or even manage a business if her husband died or if her family granted her that autonomy. Some women were priestesses, trained in ritual and literate in cuneiform, their duties intertwined with the city's religious life. Marriage was central to a woman's identity. but it was also a contract, often recorded by scribes and sealed with a witness. Dowries were carefully itemized: livestock, linens, jewelry, even servants. Once married, a woman moved into her husband's home, where her status was largely defined by her ability to manage the household and bear children. And yet, within those walls, she often wielded quiet authority. Imagine a woman carefully measuring oil into a lamp, calling gently to her children, preparing offerings for a household shrine. Her influence is subtle but constant, touching every task, every relationship. Her tools are not swords or tablets, but baskets, pots, and schedules that ensure the home flows smoothly. There were limits, of course. A woman's freedom was shaped by class, by family ties, and by the rules of tradition. Adultery, for example, carried severe penalties, especially for women. And yet, within these boundaries, many found ways to shape their world. Some rose to prominence as temple workers or craftswomen. Others wrote letters to officials, demanding justice, requesting land rights, or settling disputes. Even in death, women's roles were honored with care. Tombs from Ur have revealed richly adorned female burials, complete with jewelry, musical instruments, and delicately carved ornaments. Some were clearly of high status, buried with servants and offerings, suggesting not just respect, but reverence. The city around them hummed with larger events: trade, conquest, worship. But in these homes, a quieter power was at work. The power of routine, of nourishment, of continuity. Without women, the city could not function. Without their labor, their instruction, and their resilience, even the grandest ziggurat would eventually crumble for lack of food, cloth, and care. And so, as you leave this home and walk back through the winding lanes, you begin to see the city not just as brick and stone, but as the lived reality of countless women who carried its weight quietly, skillfully, every day. Now, with this understanding of life behind closed doors, let us explore another kind of comfort, one shared in moments of celebration and survival. We turn next to the meals of Babylon, the beer, the bread, and the small banquets that nourished a civilization. Let us now turn to the simple pleasures of sustenance, those quiet, rhythmic acts that shaped the day and nourished the spirit. In Babylon, as in all great cities, food was not merely fuel. It was ritual, memory, and community. From the humblest flatbread to the most elaborate temple feasts, the table, no matter how low to the ground, was a gathering place of importance. Imagine the soft crunch of grain beneath your heel as you walk through the granary district. The scent of barley hangs in the air, dry and warm. It is everywhere, in baskets, in jars, in the hands of bakers kneading dough at the edge of morning. Barley was the heartbeat of Babylonian cuisine. From it came the bread that fed the workers, the cakes that marked festivals, and the beer that accompanied nearly every meal. Yes, beer. Thick, yeasty, nourishing. Unlike the clear, crisp beverages known today, Babylonian beer was more like a mildly fermented porridge, consumed through a straw to filter out the floating husks of grain. It was rich in calories, often flavored with dates or honey when such luxuries could be spared, and it served as a staple drink for people of all classes. Picture yourself seated cross-legged on a mat, clay cup in hand, dipping your straw into a cool vessel of this ancient brew. The taste is earthy, slightly sour, the texture heavy but filling. A loaf of flatbread sits beside you, warm and soft, perhaps flavored with leeks or sprinkled with sesame. If the day is generous, a few slices of date or a handful of legumes may accompany the meal. The average Babylonian diet was modest but steady. Bread and beer, onions, garlic, lentils, and seasonal fruits like figs and pomegranates. Fish from the Euphrates. Occasionally, goat meat or mutton for those who could afford it. Cooking was often done in clay ovens or over open flames, using pots blackened with time. But on special occasions, holy days, royal ceremonies, weddings, feasting rose to a different level. Temples and wealthy households prepared elaborate spreads, roasted meats, sweet cakes, fruits soaked in syrup, and delicately spiced stews. These banquets were not quiet affairs. Musicians played lyres and drums, servants poured wine or date liquor, and incense drifted through the air, blending with the aroma of roasted spices. Imagine being present at one of these gatherings, not as a guest of honor, but seated quietly near the wall, observing. The flicker of firelight plays across golden bowls. Guests recline on cushions, laughter rising gently above the clink of pottery. A server offers you a taste of something rare, a stew of lamb with coriander and dried apricots, its richness unfamiliar but comforting. You eat slowly, savoring each bite, knowing it may be months before such abundance comes again. Food, even in times of plenty, was never taken for granted. Droughts could come, grain shipments delayed, markets disrupted. Every meal was part of a larger chain. Farmers, merchants, millers, bakers, all relying on one another, all at the mercy of the river and the gods. At night, as the coals fade and the dishes are cleared, there is a stillness, a moment where everyone, from the poorest laborer to the highest official, feels the same fullness, the gentle weight of bread in the belly, of beer in the limbs, and of peace, however fleeting, in the body. And so, the cuisine of Babylon, though simple, was deeply human, a quiet ritual of care and continuity, repeated day after day, generation after generation. Now, let us leave the hearth behind and walk once more to the edge of the fields, where the balance of life depended not on recipes, but on rain. In our next journey, we face the forces of nature, the floods, the droughts, and the fragile line between abundance and collapse. As we step away from the comfort of food and firelight, we turn now toward the quiet but ever-present forces that shaped Babylonian life in more unpredictable ways. The rivers, life-givers, and life-takers were central to everything, and none more so than the mighty Tigris. The Tigris, along with the Euphrates, carved the land of Mesopotamia into a fertile crescent. Its waters brought the silt that fed the barley fields, the channels that cooled the orchards, and the flow that turned wheels and carried boats to distant ports. But the river could not be tamed, not truly, and those who lived beside it knew this in their bones. Imagine waking to the sound of rain that hasn't stopped for days. The ground is soaked, and the usually placid canals now churn with brown, roiling water. You climb to the roof of your home and gaze outward. The Tigris, once winding gently beyond the fields, now spreads wide, swollen, spilling over its banks into roads, gardens, and storage pits. Flooding was expected, seasonal, even necessary, but sometimes the water came too soon, too strong. It washed away freshly planted crops, knocked over granaries, swept animals into the current. The river that brought life could just as easily bring devastation. Inscriptions from ancient rulers often include boasts about their canal systems, their dikes and embankments, quiet admissions that water was as feared as it was revered. Now picture the aftermath. The flood has receded, leaving behind thick mud, a few collapsed walls, and a heavy silence. The harvest, meant to sustain the city for months, has been ruined. In the market, grain prices rise. Families stretch their stores. Temples distribute emergency rations, and officials consult omens in the stars. A sense of waiting descends, a hope that the next season will be kinder. And when it wasn't, famine followed. Famine in ancient Mesopotamia was not always widespread or dramatic. Sometimes it came subtly, creeping through smaller yields, fewer goats, thinner barley. People tightened belts, diluted beer, and stretched flour with ground reeds. Others left, migrating towards cities or wealthier regions, seeking work, shelter, anything. There are records, cold and factual, of rations reduced, of laborers given half portions, of officials allocating emergency supplies. But there are also quiet stories. A mother watering her garden with dishwater, a child walking miles for a handful of dates, a priest offering extra incense to appeal for rain. And then, after a season or two, the rains might return. The river would settle back into its banks, and life would resume its ancient rhythm. Crops would grow again, and the silence of hunger would be replaced by the rustle of harvest. Through all of it, the flood, the drought, the famine, Babylonians endured. They planned, adapted, recorded, and rebuilt. Their relationship with the river was not one of domination, but of negotiation. They did not expect permanence. They expected cycles of growth and loss, of hunger and fullness. And so, as you sit beside the river's edge, listening to the soft slap of water against a reed boat's hull, you begin to understand the quiet patience that defines this place. A patience born from generations of watching the water, reading the skies, and learning to live with uncertainty. With that thought, we move from the earthly to the divine, from the flowing river to the firmament of belief. In our next journey, we'll drift into the mythic, into the ancient stories of creation, chaos, and cosmic order found in the Babylonian Enuma Elish. As twilight deepens over the city, and the fires in the temple courts glow softly in their clay braziers, let us turn now to stories older than kings, stories whispered in sacred halls and recited in slow, solemn tones by priests beneath starlit skies. In ancient Babylon, the cosmos was not a place of randomness, but of story, and at the center of their understanding of the world was the Enuma Elish, the great Babylonian epic of creation. It begins not with a bang or a spark, but with the mingling of waters in darkness and stillness, long before the earth, the sky, or even time itself had shape. When on high, the heavens had not been named, so begins the tale. Imagine yourself sitting cross-legged in a cool, dark temple chamber. A priest stands before a small gathering, tablet in hand, voice even and slow, reciting the lines by memory. The flickering lamp beside him casts dancing shadows, as if the walls themselves are listening. In the beginning, there was only Apsu, the fresh waters, and Tiamat, the salt sea. From their union sprang the younger gods, noisy, numerous, and unpredictable. Apsu, weary of their constant disruption, sought to destroy them, but he was thwarted. Enraged by her mate's death, Tiamat rose in furious rebellion, birthing monsters and chaos to destroy the order that had begun to take shape. Then came Marduk, the hero of Babylon's pantheon. A storm god, strong and clever, he rose from among the younger gods and offered a bargain. If he defeated Tiamat, he would become king of the gods. They agreed, and so he armed himself with wind, net, and spell, and battled the great serpent in the depths of chaos. The battle is described in poetic strokes, waves crashing, winds howling, the very elements fighting each other. But in the end, Marduk triumphs. He splits Tiamat's vast body in two, one half becoming the sky, the other the earth. From her ribs he creates the mountains, from her tears, the rivers. Order, shaped from the remains of chaos. He then arranges the stars, the calendar, the seasons. He creates the heavens for the gods, the earth for people, and appoints each deity to a task. Finally, to ease the burden of the gods, he forms mankind from the blood of a slain rebel god, so that humans might serve the divine. This is not merely a story. It is a worldview, a framework that explains the noise of nature, the threat of floods, the beauty of stars. It gives purpose to kings, to scribes, to servants, to the very bricks of the city. Everything has a place. Everything arises from conflict, but finds peace in structure. For Babylon, the Enuma Elish was not ancient history. It was living theology. Recited during the New Year festival, it reaffirmed Marduk's dominion and Babylon's central place in the divine order. It reminded people that while chaos is powerful, it can be shaped. That order is fragile, but also divine. As you leave the temple, the night air greets you gently. The stars overhead now seem different. Not distant and cold, but carefully placed, purposeful. You understand why the ancients told these stories. Not to frighten, but to comfort. Not to explain away the unknown, but to place it gently into a framework that could be lived with. The story of the gods fades now into the hush of midnight, and we return again to the human realm, where clay tablets record the more mundane but no less enduring aspects of life. Our next journey brings us back to law, to commerce, to the strange permanence of bureaucracy, as we explore the everyday documents that tethered lives together in ancient Babylon. As the night deepens and the stars continue their quiet journey overhead, let us return to the steady rhythm of everyday Babylonian life. Though this time, not through bread or prayer, but through the sharp press of a stylus into damp clay. For in Babylon, nearly every act, every trade, every marriage, every promise was etched into permanence. The clay tablet was not just a tool of record-keeping. It was trust. It was evidence. It was, in its own way, law carved into silence. Imagine, if you will, a small chamber lined with low shelves. Tablets sit in neat rows, each one marked with symbols, some no larger than a hand, others thick and heavy. A scribe sits at a smooth wooden table, stylus in hand, pressing carefully into a soft, rectangular slab of clay. The scent of earth fills the room. The only sound is the faint tapping of reed against mud. Today, a contract is being written. 2 merchants have agreed to exchange livestock for grain, and each condition must be recorded precisely. The number of animals, the season of delivery, the location of transfer. If either party breaks the terms, the tablet will be brought before a judge, a temple scribe or elder, who will interpret the symbols and administer justice, usually as outlined in a codified set of laws, such as Hammurabi's. But contracts were not limited to trade. They governed marriages, adoptions, labor arrangements, and even oaths to the gods. If a man promised to repay a debt, it was written. If a father gave his daughter in marriage, the dowry was recorded. If someone accused another of theft or sorcery, it could be entered into the record. Now imagine turning over one of these tablets and reading a different kind of inscription. Not a contract, but a curse. Yes, curses too were etched in clay. If someone felt wronged, or if a sacred object had been defiled, a curse might be composed and hidden in a wall, a grave, or beneath a temple floor. These were often written in careful, formal language. May the gods strike down anyone who removes this stone, or may misfortune fall upon the one who breaks this vow. Not shouted, not screamed, but pressed quietly into clay and left to rest in the dark. These curses weren't just superstition, they were psychological safeguards, a reminder that actions carried consequences, that broken trust would not go unnoticed, even by the divine. Even more intriguing are the tablets that preserve personal letters, a mother asking about her son's health, a worker requesting better rations, a priest complaining about temple supplies. These voices are softer, more human, often laced with dry humor or weary resignation. They remind us that bureaucracy, even in ancient Babylon, was not without its frustrations. And yet the clay tablets endured. They outlived their writers, their readers, their cities. Sun-dried and fired by accident or design, they now rest in museum drawers and archaeological archives across the world. Messages from 3,000 years ago, still legible, still comprehensible, still profoundly ordinary in their concerns. So you see, Babylon was not just built from bricks and bitumen. It was built from words, etched into clay by hands long gone, preserved by time and chance. Words of law, of complaint, of love, of warning. Each tablet a quiet voice, preserved in silence. And now, as we approach the end of our journey, we will leave these written records behind and return once more to the crumbling city itself, where the streets begin to empty and the torches burn low. Our final path takes us to the decline, when Babylon's greatness began to dim, not with drama, but with a slow, quiet fading. The city of Babylon, in all its beauty and brilliance, did not fall just once. Like a fading star, it dimmed and flickered across the centuries, rising, falling, rising again, and eventually settling into silence. Tonight, in this final chapter of our journey, we return to the quiet end. Not the violence of conquest, but the slow erosion of glory, felt more in the emptiness of the streets than in the clamor of armies. Imagine walking through the city in its later years. The grand ziggurats still stand, though their edges are worn, their bricks crumbling softly in the heat. The Ishtar Gate still towers overhead, but the blue glaze has faded, its lions dulled by time. The markets are quieter now, fewer traders, fewer goods. The rhythm of the city is gentler, slower, less confident. Once, Babylon was the center of the world. Under kings like Hammurabi and Nebuchadnezzar II, it boasted power, splendor, and a reputation that reached across empires. But time is a patient force, and greatness is difficult to sustain. As the centuries passed, the city changed hands many times, conquered by the Hittites, revived by the Kassites, ruled by the Assyrians, then rebuilt again by the Chaldeans. Under Persian rule, Babylon was still respected. The The Persians admired its temples and respected its traditions. Yet something subtle began to shift. Power moved westward. Trade routes changed. New capitals rose. Babylon became important, still, but no longer essential. Then came Alexander the Great. When he arrived in 331 BCE, he dreamed of making Babylon his imperial capital. For a brief moment, the city stirred with hope. Streets were cleared, temples reopened, plans were drawn. But Alexander died here, in the palace, before those dreams could become real. His empire fractured, and with it, Babylon's final chance at revival. You can picture it now, once grand buildings slowly giving way to weeds and dust. The canals, once carefully maintained, silt up. The temples echo not with chants, but with silence. Roofs collapse. Records stop. The scribes set down their styluses. The priests stop lighting the fires. There was no final battle, no cataclysm. Babylon simply faded. Its people moved on, drawn to other cities, other rivers. Time, not sword or flame, was the conqueror here. And yet, Babylon never truly vanished. For centuries afterward, travelers visited its ruins, walking among the broken stones, marveling at what once stood. Writers and scholars spoke its name with reverence and awe. Poets placed it in dreams. Scriptures made it a symbol. Its memory endured, lingering in the collective mind of humanity like a distant, haunting melody. Even today, fragments of Babylon live on, in museum cases, in university archives, in language and law, and perhaps most quietly, in the shape of our stories, in how we imagine cities, power, and the rise and fall of civilizations. So, as we bring this journey to a close, let us rest in the stillness that follows the end, not with sadness, but with reverence. For Babylon, in all its rises and falls, reminds us of the quiet dignity of time, the steady rhythm of history, and the deep, enduring presence of those who came before us. Now, allow yourself to drift deeper into sleep, cradled by the silence of ancient walls and the soft winds that pass over forgotten stones. The city is quiet now. The fires are out. The stars, as always, remain. Now the streets are empty. The torches have burned low. The soft wind carries nothing but dust, and the long, slow song of a city that once held the world's attention has faded into stillness. You've walked through Babylon, not as a conqueror, not as a builder, but simply as a witness. You've seen its laborers rise before dawn. You've watched its kings forge empires and laws. You've wandered beneath its towering gates and felt the weight of its myths, its markets, its prayers, and its endings. And now all is quiet again. This is the gift of history, not just the stories we tell, but the deep, slow rhythm they reveal. Civilizations rise with ambition, thrive with ritual and labor, and fall not with violence alone, but with time. Time that moves slowly, gently, like the hush that follows a storm. You are no longer in Babylon. You are back in your own time, in your own quiet space, but perhaps with a faint trace of clay dust on your fingertips, or the scent of baked barley still lingering in the corners of your memory. Let those images settle gently into your mind. Let the slow passage of time, marked by stars, rivers, bricks, and breath, guide you now into rest. The city sleeps. And so may you.